The introduction to EventWorks session will be presented by Tim, Chief Operating Officer of WithTeam. It will last about 35 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session to follow for a few minutes. So please do not hesitate to write your question in the chat box, and then I leave the floor to Tim, who will introduce the key objective of the session, and then make a demonstration live of EventWorks functionality. Tim, the floor is yours.
Yep, perfect. Thank you, Ameline. Well, welcome everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. So we kind of happy to have you on this webinar. First time for us, we organizing something like that. As you, some of you will know, we originally had planned our annual workshop today. So we thought, given the current circumstances, that we wanted to keep the date and organize some virtual sessions instead. So thanks for joining. I hope you can hear me okay. I hope technology will stay with us, as we are quite a few people on the line. If you have any issues, Ameline, which is our moderator, will be there to assist. You can always either reach out in the chat box or let us know if you have any issues hearing us okay. So without further delay, I'm gonna start with our first session. Let me share my screen. There we go. Actually, for this first session, let me share this. I hope you see my screen okay. Yeah, that seems to be working. So the objective of the call of this session actually is to give you a global overview of EventWorks as a tool. So the audience, although we have some people who have been using the tool already quite a bit on the call, the audience is more aimed to, I would say, new or first-time users. But I will still try to maybe give away some tips and tricks as well on EventWorks. So it's really a general overview on the structure, the navigation, and some of our functionalities and modules. I have just a few slides, not a lot. This is quite I'll focus more on the demo, but I think for people who haven't seen EventWorks or are not very familiar with the platform, it's important maybe to just show you a bit what the tool is about, or explain you. So for the ones, like I said, who don't know EventWorks is a all-in-one event management platform that gives you or the user, the event manager, really the empowerment to manage your event. And I think the word empowerment is quite important, because we feel, and this is the way the tool has been constructed, that the tool should be there for you and that you should be able to do everything you need to do as an event manager yourself, obviously after you know how to use the tool and have got some training. The tool is used, I would say, both for what we call meeting and events, as well as sport competitions. That's why we have, I would say, people on the call, and also as our client base from different industries. And you will see it's one and the same tool. Hello, welcome. So EventWorks is a standard tool, as you will see, but with a high degree of customization that can be adapted to your event management processes. And again, this is important to us. We really feel that the tool should be there to serve your processes and not the other way around. Is it for a registration or an entry process, or, for example, for an accreditation process? So that's an important element. I would say it has been built by event managers for event managers. So we although we provide a technology platform, we are really all coming from an event manager background, and not I would say pure IT company, and hence why we believe, you will see hopefully from the demo, that the tool has pretty strong data management and back office capabilities and functionalities. You will see as well from the demo, I hope, that there is a standard layer of features, such as a built-in communication tool that is allowing you to send emails, as well as, for example, a reporting tool that is built in, that you will see hopefully, that is allowing you a lot of flexibility to manage your data. Voila, so that's about it on I would say the structure of the tool. Last but not least, I mean the tool is really built as a modular tool, so it has different modules that you will be able, or that you as a client can activate or deactivate. It's web-based, as you will see. And I'll show you the difference between what we call the front office, which is the front-end facing side for people to register or participate to events, as well as the back office, which I'll spend quite some time in during the demo. I won't have time to go over all the modules and features, but this will give you already a little bit overview. I'll touch upon some of them, just to make you aware about the extent of the tool. But as you will know, we have quite some other sessions today, which are more targeted on some of these particular features or functionalities or modules. So without further delay, let me get to, there we go. I'll stop sharing this and I'll go straight to, okay, so I hope you can see my screen again. So like I said, it's quite a challenge to give you in half an hour or a bit less a global overview of the tool, but I'll try to do my best. Like I said, the tool is a web-based tool, so you have a URL to log in. And as a user, you have a username and a password. So basically, the way this works quite classically, so we go, you fill in your username and your password, and as you can see here, we have what we call a dual authentication that is activated, similar as works for your bank, for example, where you can log in into the tool. So as usually as a client, you have a client account, and you get into your client environment where you will have your different events that can be organized in different folders. This is our demo account, where I will take, in this case, a particular event, which is this one, which I'll also use later on, that brings you to your environment. What you see here is really what we call the back office, and I'll explain you a bit more in a few minutes. Obviously, you have, I would say, navigation that is done through different elements. You have your user account here on the top, where you can make some changes. Most of the navigation is done with the sidebar here on your left-hand side, where you have a black bar, if you like. When you click anywhere on the bar, it opens up the different menu items. This is quite an important one in order to help you navigate in the different sections of the tool. You will see here that we have actually two, if I close them down, two big, I would say, distinctions. One is the back office, and the other one is the settings. The main difference between those two, without again going too much into detail, is really, I would say, on one side, as the name it says, to set up your event where you have all your settings, and the other one where you can manage, I would say, once your event is constructed live, where you can manage, I would say, your event on an ongoing basis. Obviously, through what we call users and roles, you can define different accesses based on the different user profiles, which can hide or show some of these menu items depending on your role of the event. So that's an important one. Without going too much into the user and roles, we go very far in that aspect. Also in terms of accreditation that maybe Johan might touch upon this afternoon. Navigation wise, you have always the section on the top here where you are in. So if I move around, let's say in different menu items, I can always see where I am, and everything which is in blue is hyperlinked. So you can always click in anything that is blue. The main element, or I would say where you always end up in usually, is what we call the participant list, which is basically all the people which are in your event. This brings me to the next point, which is how do we get data into the system? Obviously, there are different ways to get data into the system. One is via the registration forms, which I'll show you in a minute, which is what we call the front office. The other one is by creating a participant manually by clicking on the Create Participant button, like I just did now. Or a third way is to do an import with an Excel spreadsheet. Again, I'm not going to go into detail. Yannick will cover that part a bit more extensively in the next session on the data management and the reporting. So like I said, there are different ways of getting the data into the system. If I jump from here to what we call the front office, I can just go in a participant's front end. This is what the participant, so which is different than the user. The user is usually you as an event manager. This is what the participant will see when he gets access to your event. There are different ways of getting access, which I'll explain in a minute. What you see here actually is for this particular person, which is myself, part of the VIP guest group. What is very important, and which is really the backbone of our system, is our groups, which you can call categories as well if you like, because basically you see here I have delegates, I have VIP, but I can also have media. I'll show you later. All these different groups can have a different behavior, both I would say from a front-end perspective. So when I have to log in or fill in my information onto the front end, the registration forms, I can have different information I need to provide, variable and depending on my group. So in this case, I am a VIP. I have a number of tabs, including accommodation. If I log in now as, let's say, another group, in this case, a normal delegate group, you will see that my tabs are a bit different. If I switch from this one, in this case, I have accommodation. In this case, I don't have accommodation, but I have, for example, a payment tab. This is just to show you, again, without going too much into the details of the construction and the different functionalities that are available, to show you that you can have different groups with different information that are can be requested by your different participants to the event. Again, without going too much in detail, some of these tabs are linked with, there you go, because I cannot log in two at the same time. So some of these tabs are linked with what we call our modules. So in this case, the activities or session modules, where you have, for example, a program or a more detailed program of the event. You know, so these different things can be linked to the different modules. I will give a session as well this afternoon on activities and sessions, which we will go a bit more into detail in how the activities and session module really functions and how it is configured. So that's to give you an idea on the front end. Obviously, the design or the colors that you have here with the banner, as well as the footer, can be tailored and configured by you. We have a little menu item which is defining the different elements you can define in terms of colors, etc., which I'll show you here. Without again going too much in detail, but there are quite a few things you can define in terms of colors, spacing, etc. What is important to notice as well is that, and I'll show you, is that the design is responsive, which means that if I have a smartphone, you see my menu item is coming here on the top. If I have a tablet, the design is really adapting based on the different devices you are potentially using for this. So that's an important aspect maybe to mention. I told you before that basically you can get the data into different ways. Again, this is where your process can be flexible. You can have, for example, an open link where people register to the event. So in this case, it's just a link that can be made available either by sending an email to a certain constituent group or by having a link accessible on your website. In this case, we've activated what we call the different categories, which you see here, and I can basically define in which group, remember the groups which I mentioned before, which are quite important, in which group I will register. And basically, depending on my selection, you will see again, you see these tabs are different. Now I selected the media group. The system will know in which group and what information is requested for your particular group. In parallel, you can also do invitation emails, which means that you can take a whole group of people, in this case, the VIP people, that you will, for example, invite directly because you have already imported them into the system. So the system will send an email to that particular person, and I'll show you, I have received an email on my private email, but I can show you here. So I received a personal invitation to register, where you have again different links. This is what we call the direct login link, which is bringing me to my personal invitation, where I can then fill in my different information. So that's a bit on the front end side and how this can look like, and without going into details into the construction of the platform. I would like to show you now a few elements of the back office. Like I said, this is the participant list, so it's all the people you have into your system. You will see that we have these different groups. In this case, we have delegates, we have VIP, we have media, and so on and so forth. We also have some exhibitors, and we have quite an important feature that Yannick will explain later on. We have what we call our live filter here, which is allowing you to basically do some quick or filtering. We also obviously have a find button here where you can go a bit more into detail in looking at your or if you have to look up different people. What is important as well is that when you click onto a participant, you have all the information which is around the participant, which is displayed into your back office. What you see here, the same as the front end, this is something that you can easily configure yourself. So you can, really, I would say, define these tabs in different ways. You can display really the information the way you like. So here we have a personal details page, and we have put the visa information on a separate page. You see that some of these buttons are conditional. All this can be constructed by yourself as well. So it's really up to you to define how your event looks like. In this case, you see we have quite some tabs because we have activated quite some elements onto this demo event. The extent as well of the settings menu will also be variable depending on your different modules you activate on your event. An important page, which I haven't showed you in detail, but which I will quickly review now, is obviously your event information page. It's usually where you start, and this is where you define basically your different modules and that you activate as well on your particular event. If I now go back to my participant, like I said, we have the information which is displayed here that you can tailor as you wish. On a participant level, you have, I would say, also two important elements. One is the communications tab, where you can see all the communication that has been sent out to that particular participant. And we also have very important, the change tracking. So we do change tracking on all the fields. So we really have this change tracking and this communication element both on a personal level as well as on an event level. So the same, I have a global change tracking where I can do a find on different elements, something that Yannick will explain later on as well in the session later on this morning. And we also have a global communication history on the event level. So I think these are two important elements as well, which are part of the standard features of our tool. Maybe I'm checking time. Yeah, we're still doing good. Maybe two other important elements I wanted to touch upon is the communication side. So you can define your own communication templates into the system. Some of them are sent automatically by the system. When I say automatically, I'll show you in a minute. When you submit your registration, the system will automatically send a confirmation or an acknowledgement email to the participant. Some can be linked to triggering. I'll show you an example as well. For example, if you approve a participant, so you can define different triggers. Some are just can be sent manually via the system. When I say manually, you have a button here where you can just mail a participant with the different templates. Obviously, you can just go to your participant list, do a certain selection, and do a group action by sending a group email to different people. What you can also do, if this is configured, is sending an SMS as well. So we have different types of communications that can be defined. So that's on the communication template. There are quite a lot of functionalities you can activate on a communication email because you can also define, like I mentioned before, triggers as well if there is a status change, triggers if you send an email putting a value on a certain field. We have a copy to email assistant functions. So there are quite a lot of different functionalities that you can activate, including attachments, dynamic documents generated through our document module, calendar files, filtering, conditions, and so on and so forth. But this is not the purpose of the session to go into detail into these different elements. The other quite important feature on EventWorks is the reporting. The reporting is really a very powerful tool that is really used, I would say, a lot into our system because this is where you can really define your own processes and use the reports to manage your different processes, either an approval process, an accommodation process, an accreditation process, and so on. Again, it's not the purpose to show you too much in detail, but what I wanted to show you is maybe just a few examples. If I click into a report, I have obviously my report which displays. I can edit that report where I have a lot of different elements I can define. Obviously, the most important is what are the elements you want to put onto your report, which is the first item. The other is how do you want to sort the report, and then obviously what is the filtering. In this case, you see there are no filters, so basically the system is going to take basically everything you have into the system, except in this case by default there are some statuses which are filtered out by default. The statuses, it's an important one as well from the system because it's really what is defining you, what we call the registration status. It's really what is defining in which process of the registration a participant is in, if he's registering front end. Yannick again will go a bit more in detail into these different statuses a bit later this morning. So you have these different reports that can be shared externally, that can all be exported in Excel, and basically you can just change anything you would like, add, take away, etc. And then just go to the report. Every report can be duplicated in case you have reports. We have different folders, so there are quite some nice elements. We have a nice little feature which is an edit data on-off as well, which allows you to do inline editing into a report, by changing people, for example, for a group, or changing, like I said, different statuses. We have action buttons as well in the report that are allowing you to do different things related to different modules, either creating a badge on accreditation, managing hotel rooms, managing accreditations, approving, duplicating, so on and so forth. So again, it's not the purpose to go too much in detail, but we are quite happy with the way the reports are set up in our system, because it's allowing you really to do or to have a lot of flexibility. Last thing maybe to mention, and then I might maybe have a quick look at the questions. What is quite important is that into the system you can create any type of field. So for example, I'll just refresh this. If I go into a participant, you will see there are quite some fields here. I can create any field myself into the system. That is something that I can display into a report or into one of the pages. So so this is the different fields. Obviously the system is providing you with a certain set of basis fields, and there are also quite some fields linked to modules, like you see here, for example. But I can create any new field into the system that I can, like I said, display either front end, only display back end, display into a report. What we usually say to our clients is that as soon as you have an Excel or and where you would usually be tempted to use your Excel to manage your event and add a column into your Excel, we usually say to our clients, well, instead of adding a column to your Excel, you should just add a field into the system and then use it from there, and then potentially export it into Excel for just pure reporting purposes. But basically this gets you a way of using a lot of Excel spreadsheets with different versions, with different people working on it. This is very nice. We can have different people working on it, because as well you have the different change tracking onto the system, where you can see who did what, changed what at what time, and so forth. So that's, I think, a very, I would say, in a nutshell, what I wanted to show you. Checking if there are any questions. I don't think there are many. I think either I was too clear, or people haven't got enough coffee this morning yet. But I'm turning to Emmeline to see if there are any particular questions.
In fact, either you were too clear or people are too shy to ask questions. There is none in the chat at the moment. So if anyone wants to raise his hand and write, have a little question on what Tim has presented today, please feel free now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in the meanwhile, let people maybe come up with some questions. I can, as we still have some time, I can show maybe some more of the functionalities and maybe go a bit more in detail in some of the modules very briefly. Johan, yes. I don't know if Johan is still on the call. Anything you want me to show in particular, or that I might have missed? Okay. I guess that means a no. So let me show you maybe some of the modules, just to give you a little bit of a glimpse. So like I said before, what you see here on the left-hand side in the menu items is really, I would say, how you use your event construction, as well as your different modules setup. So as soon as you activate a module, there are a number of things you need to define, which is quite logic. What you usually do when you build your event is obviously, like I briefly showed you before, your event information, where you can have a lot of different options. I haven't showed you as well, but you can have also an incomplete reminder sent out automatically by the system with a certain timing, which means that if people are starting to fill in their registration, if they stop in the middle of the process, the system will resend an automatic email to those different people. So this is where you start your event information. The design page layout, I haven't showed you in detail, or actually I haven't showed you at all. This is where you really define your different pages, I would say, both from a front-end perspective. Remember, this was my media group where I had 3 pages. If I go back to the back office, you see here, this is my media group. You find exactly my 3 pages, and this has been defined here. So if I go now onto a specific page, I can obviously change or move things around. I can add a new field if I now do save. So I moved what is media type above the other one. Let me see if I'm still logged on, because obviously there is a security. There we go. So I'm logged out. So I'll just quickly show you again. Okay, I'll take a media person. Just take this person. There we go. Login as attendee. So you see I have my 3 pages here. If I now, let's say, want to move my press registration number to the top, I'm here. You see my press registration number is here. If I suddenly want, okay, let's put it all on the top, so it's quite clear. And if I now refresh my page, I'll just close those 2. There we go. You would see that my press registration number moved from the top. So it is as simple as that to move elements around. I can, the same way I can add a new field if I have created a new one, and I can decide on which tab I want to put it. I can also create conditional conditions, which means that I can have certain tabs opening only if certain conditions are met. For example, do you require accommodation? Yes, no. Based on the yes, no, maybe on the personal detail page, it will open an accommodation tab based on that particular condition. So that's where you design, I would say, your event and the different elements. Yeah.
Just to interrupt, some question has come through, and I guess I will ask you the first one. Following on that, how long does it take to do a basic setup just for accreditation, for example?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it really depends on the complexity, but it goes very quickly. In the sense, when I say very quickly, it's probably less than half a day. Again, so it is really defining your accreditation matrix, your different accreditation privileges and zones. Obviously, defining your accreditation badge. And then having all your process set up. So I would say, depending on the complexity of the process, it's anything between half a day and a few days, including some testing, because it's just really about configuration. Johan will probably touch upon that a bit in the afternoon as well.
Thank you. Another one.
Multi-event setup. Yeah, multi-event setup. What I showed you before is that I was in this particular event, the WIS-Team webinar session activities. You see in here, so this is my client environment. I can have different events live or open at the same time. Actually, these are all demo events, so you see they're all open, but you have a status filter here. Well, actually, no, this one is only open for new registrations, actually. So it's really a matter of creating different events. What we haven't activated on this particular client is what we call our profile, because you can activate the profile layer, which is a kind of a mini CRM layer across the different events, which is allowing you to keep, I would say, information on a person level that is attending different events, which means that data linked to a participant, to a profile or to a person, it could be media, it could be different constituent groups, can be kept from one event to the other.
And I guess this you are presenting as a super admin, in fact, but how many user level can be set in the system on one side? And on the other side is, would people be able to add their invitation to personal calendar?
Yeah, okay, good question. So the first question, in terms of users and roles, you can define as many as you want. Without, again, going too much in detail, we have basically two elements. One is the element of a role. So when you define a role, it could be, like you see here, a media approval role or a role for a travel agency. You define on that role what that role could do or see. So the way the system works is that we work with what we call resource groups. So every action, every item you can do in the back office is a resource. We usually regroup those resources into groups. And then basically when you create a role, you can assign these resource groups to a specific user. What you can also do is define specifically what reports that user can see, and also potentially exclude certain groups. So let's say you could create a media approval role that can only see the media group and that can only approve or can only do the action approve and can only see a certain number of fields. So this is the roles. And obviously when you define a user, you will define for that user if you define for that user if which role is assigned to that particular user, if you like. You can obviously define different roles to one and the same user if you want to, and then the higher role will take precedent on the other. Once the invitation has been sent to the guest, can the guest attend at this event to the personal calendar? Yes. So in every communication email template, you can define a number of things. You can define if you add the event calendar, which is basically the date of the event that has been defined into your event information page. You can also define if you have sessions. Remember, I had some sub-sessions in one of my tabs. I can then define either if I would like to send the full calendar, which is including the detailed sessions, or only my calendar, which is the ones I have been assigned to. I'm trying to read the other question. Have you shown QR code registration in email to participant? No, I haven't, but you can obviously, every participant has a unique ID and a unique QR code, which can be sent to the participant either into an email or into what we call the document module that can then be used for access control purposes. And you can also display that QR code into what we call the delegate or participant app. Okay, I'm trying to read some of the questions. I see Gwendo responded to some of them as well.
There is a question regarding integration with travel agencies.
Yeah, okay, good question. So we have indeed an integration with, for the moment, we have an existing integration with Caleçon Wagonlit. And actually, for the moment, the way we've integrated with them is with their own internal system. And actually, we've been discussing with them to see how we could integrate with the Amadeus system. It's not something which is there yet, but we have already taken some steps into that direction. So.
Another one. Could we import? Sorry.
We import multiple guests using an Excel to an event. Yes, that's something that actually Yannick will show in the data management session. So you can just import an Excel spreadsheet into the system. What you can also do, which is a very useful feature, is that you can also, when you do an import, update actually an existing list. So you really can define when you upload your Excel list, if you're doing an import or if you're doing an update, which can be based on a particular key that you define, which could be first name, last name, email address, let's say. And based on the correspondence, the system will then update the field you ask him to update. and if you want to, at the same time, you can also add new records if you want to. Okay, I think I try to cover
last one actually that we missed a bit higher up, sorry, Rizlan. If you create a folder on the event page, it will not change the link to the events, right?
Correct. So if you're on the event page, if I create a new folder, it will not change the event link. The event link, as you might have seen here, this little bit here is what we call the event URL, and the event URL is defined in your event information page that you see here. So basically the webinars 2020_activities is exactly what you see here. So as long as you don't change this, that's why we always say be very careful once your event is live, don't change this bit, because it will obviously change or make all your links that have been sent out via the system invalid. But yeah, if you create a folder, no problem, it will not change anything to the web link.
Thank you very much, Tim. I would like to thank you all for joining this session. We will probably wrap up now and leave you the time to join for the next session.
We still have an API question. Yeah, do you provide an API? Yes, we do have an API. Documentation can be provided upon request. So which is it's classic. We use JSON and REST. That's about all what I can tell you on the technicalities, but Johan will be able to reply if he's on the line, or maybe later when he's doing his presentation. But yeah, we have an API that can be used for exchange of data and so on. And Leah, I'm happy to follow up offline and provide you any documentation if required. Cool. Thank you, Gwendo, for noticing we missed a question. Great. Well, I hope
Tim just mentioned, not hesitate to contact us if there is any other question. We hope that you have learned quite a few elements and you will be able to implement it and take it away when you are using EventWorks. Now we look forward to seeing you at the next session starting in about 15 minutes. There is an accommodation module session as well as a reporting and data management session. If you want to join one of this session, you just need to log out of this session and click on the correct link. And for the other, we look forward to seeing you soon and have a great rest of the day.
Yeah,
thank you very much for attending.
And we will be doing these webinars on a more regular basis, including some more targeted sessions like some of the ones we have this afternoon. So stay tuned. I'm sure we're going to mix more of these type of sessions. So thanks for joining and thanks for your attention.